Fantastic. I'm usually hiding out at the back corner, so I'm used to seeing all the back of your heads. So you're looking good. I just have to apologise. I'll try harder next week with how I'm dressed. What a fantastic opportunity to be here and to share with you on this Remembrance Sunday. I'll start with a prayer. May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of all our hearts be forever pleasing in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. For those who watched the rugby yesterday, just going to see if this is working. Aha. We're getting there. For those who watched the rugby yesterday, you might be forgiven for thinking that was actually one of the most exciting, and if you haven't seen it yet, I won't give the result away, rugby games you've ever seen. But I want to tell you it wasn't. Actually, that happened in about 1985 in Chichester in an inter-house rugby match at the Chichester High School for Boys Comprehensive School. I was on the pitch and the scores were even. It was fairly close. We were fairly evenly matched. It was one of those moments when suddenly the ball came to me, there was a bit of a shuffle and I was through. And it was good. I had two problems. One was a guy standing in front of me who was big. I mean, he was huge. He had muscles in places I don't even have places. You know what I mean? He was absolutely massive, and he was growling. And as I ran with the ball, trying to get to the other end, about 3/4 of the way back, he kind of spread. I thought, right, I'm doing it. And I dodged left, ducked right, and then feinted again under his... And I was through. I was past him. I left him in my dust. It was fantastic. But I had another problem. And that was this guy off to my left. Now, I'm a fast runner. I used to be, not now. But was a fast runner. He was faster. I gave it everything I got. I was about halfway. He was moving in from the wing. I was going about 3/4 of the way. I was almost there. I looked over my shoulder. He was almost on me. I gave it everything I got, but I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder at him. I could almost feel his breath on my shoulder as I was going there. And looking over my shoulder, I was at the line. I thought, last couple of steps, and then I dove. And it was like slow motion. It was absolutely beautiful. It was probably the greatest sporting moment of my life. When I dived through the air, it felt like about 9 foot off the floor. Came down to put the ball down with downward pressure. Yes! And I turned round to find him just laughing. He patted me on the back and walked off. I didn't quite know what was going on. And then I looked at my own team thinking, where's the adulation, where's the praise? And they were... Oh. Let me tell you, there's 2 lines at the end of a rugby pitch. One is called the try line. If you get the ball over that, that's great. But there's a second line called the dead ball line. It's called that for a reason. And if you put the ball over that line, you're out of play. No try. I'd done it. I'd gone right off the edge of the pitch. Was that because I didn't know the rules of rugby? No, I did. Was that because my PE teacher hadn't taught me how to do it? No, I knew. It was slightly because it was a school pitch and it was quite a small little between the two. But do you know what? I was so busy with this guy over my shoulder, worrying about him, that I forgot where I was on the pitch. I lost my bearings. So busy in my own head and in my own moment. And for me, the act of remembrance is, as a nation, us remembering where we are on the pitch. It's a moment to stop. 2 minutes is a long time, isn't it? It's a really long time to be silent for that. Well done for the kids. I was impressed with that. That's the best I've heard. But we need to remember where we are on the pitch. As a nation, what's brought us to this point. And those who've, perhaps we know their names, perhaps we don't, who've paid that cost for us. As an army chaplain, I've read this passage so many times. I won't read it out now, but hopefully if you're regular to church, you'll know it well. John 15, in the Last Supper. Jesus talking as he's about to go to his death, to lay down his life for his friends. And he says, my command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend. Today that's being said, that bit of Jesus' words is being said throughout the nation. Pretty much every service that's happening today will be based around those words. What does that mean in that context? I'm going to share a few of my holiday snaps from Afghan and Iraq with you, and also share a few of the stories of the people that I've been privileged to serve with. Those people who've laid down their lives for their friends. What does that look like in reality? And what does that mean to us too as Christians, as a church who are called to follow in Jesus' words? He was saying that about himself, but he's also saying it to his followers, and that includes you and me. He was saying that's what we're to do and live in that world of laying down our lives for our friends. That's the units I've been with over 20 years. And to me, everything I've done has been about the men and women in those units who've actually got out there and they've done incredible things. I kind of realised that it had all changed. It was actually 2 years into my army time. I'd spent 2 years, done training and all that sort of stuff, quite hard. I actually fell asleep on patrol, walking down a thing at night. So tired was I never realised you could fall asleep as you were walking. That's quite impressive. I'd done some various things. I'd buried some people, sadly. But it wasn't until flying into Iraq in a Herc that the penny dropped for me. Went in really high to avoid the missiles, and then when you're so high, suddenly they put a light on, a red light, all the lights go off, you put your helmets on, and it falls out the sky in order to avoid missiles. And at the last minute, thank goodness, it bottoms out, and you land there. They put the back doors open. The heat of Iraq, even at night, was huge. And within 24 hours, we'd been mortared. They'd had to remove all the watermelons because the insurgents had poisoned them, hoping that they could take some of our guys out. And for one poor chap who was a local interpreter, he didn't turn up for one of our sessions to brief us on culture. And when we found out the next day that he'd been captured by the Mahdi army insurgents, the Iran-backed insurgents, and they killed him, tortured him, and delivered his head to the patrol base that we were based in, all within 24 hours. And I suddenly realised I wasn't in Kansas anymore. I suddenly realised that this is different. Even after being in the army for 2 years, this was outside of my frame of reference. I had to learn fast. See, war is horrible. It is disgusting. It's destructive. It's evil. It's dehumanising. Yet in it, you can find the most incredible moments of courage, valour, compassion, selfless commitment. Amidst the worst of humanity, you can also glimpse the best of humanity. Laying down your life, obviously, on Remembrance, talks of those who've paid that ultimate sacrifice. But actually, it's also an attitude of living. It's an attitude of serving, of constantly laying down your life in the service of others. It's been proven that often soldiers don't fight for the big lofty ideas. They fight for the person who's actually next to them on the battlefield. Those are the people who they're laying down their lives for. One person really springs to mind, I think, and that's Kate Nesbitt. She was a young Navy medic. I'm the Army. You wouldn't think I was bigging up the Navy. But she was brilliant at her job. She'd been sent to Bastion, which was the huge, sprawling British base in Helmand, to work in the med centre there. She was we called it Slipper City. It was a nice place. They got a Pizza Hut they had there. It was a nice place to be if you're going to be in Afghan. But my guys were out in 25 forward operating bases, and we didn't have enough medics. So they put call in, and she was moved, expecting to stay in this Slipper City, and she moved to the most southerly patrol bases in Afghanistan. Young girl, not expecting it at all. And one day her company, C Company, were patrolling when they were ambushed. Corporal List was shot through the throat. I was on patrol that day with another company, B Company, but when I got back what had happened, I went and found them out that evening and just sat down with them with a brew next to a fire as they told me what it had been like. The cry of "Medic!" went up, The colour sergeant, who was next to Corporal List, he said he was digging in with his teeth, he was saying. The weight of fire was so heavy against him. He was putting a first field dressing on Corporal List's neck to stop him bleeding out, and firing some rounds back with his other, all the time trying to keep as low as possible. And suddenly, he said the amount of fire against them went up massively, and he heard footsteps. And there was the medic, Kate, who just ran across 70 metres of open ground. And all she said was, "I'm here." She plonked herself down. She couldn't get flat because she had to put an airway in, save Corporalist's life, stop the bleeding, which she did. It wasn't quick, took some time. The soldiers went on to project force, as we say, win the firefight. We managed to get Corporalist back to Medivac. He got back, he survived. He's now got a tattoo that says, "Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger," which I think is really quite good. Kate got the MC for that. Only the second woman ever to get the MC. Absolutely incredible. The first woman in the Navy to get it. But I love that, just doing her job that she'd been trained to do, but in a situation that she wasn't expecting to be in, doing something that you've got to be mad to do, to run over open ground like that. I'm here. I'm here. There she is. That was literally just after they came back in off the ground, after she saved his life. Chaplains, why do you have vicars on a battlefield? It's a good question, isn't it? I guess my short answer is I'd rather have a battlefield with a vicar on it than one without. But that's what we do, honoured to provide spiritual leadership, pastoral care and moral guidance to all those around us. Comes from Martin of Tours. He was a Roman soldier, and what he did was he was out in the 3rd century, freezing night, below freezing, and he saw a naked beggar there who was freezing to death. And so he got his Roman cloak, he got his sword, and he chopped the Roman cloak in half and gave it to the beggar so he could help him, so he didn't freeze to death. Why did he chop it in half? It's because if he gave it all, he'd have frozen to death. So what he did was, he was there in the situation, sharing the same experience, and when it came down to it, he shared what he could do. And that's what we always say as chaplains. We always say we're not there to oil the cogs of war, but actually we're there to help those who are caught up within those cogs. And one of our heroes, Woodbine Willie, you may have heard of him, Starlight Kennedy, he was given advice to another chaplain called Hardy, who went on to win an MC and a VC in the First World War. He was just coming out to the theatre, and they were asking him what he should do. And basically he said, "Live with the men, go everywhere they go. Make up your mind that you will share all their risks and more if you do any good. Take a great deal of love in your heart and go up to them. Laugh with them, joke with them. You can pray with them sometimes, but pray for them always." And that is still almost our job description of chaplains in the army. There's a Where's Wally picture. Where's the Padre there? Probably won't recognise me because I haven't got the beard and I'm a couple of stones lighter too. But if you notice, you can see there's a little cross there. And I'm also not the one carrying a weapon, because we don't carry weapons, just carry other kit to help out. But that's part of incarnation, all that we know so well, of going where people are, living where they live, doing what they do. And that's part of laying down our lives. What's that in your context? Where you live, where you work, in your families, in your friendship groups, at your workplaces. What's it mean to be incarnational, to live where they live? Interestingly, on that one of the sergeant in charge had been killed by 2 weeks before that, and I knew his best mate was on Radio Stag that night, so I set my alarm for about 2 o'clock, got up and just went to chat with him. And actually, they'd done their crying on the first day, and then they had to crack on. And just 2 weeks later, being able to sit with him in the dark, just waiting to hear the radio, and it was quiet. And it's the moment of humanity, and he could talk about his mate, and the tears cried. And it's being there alongside. I love that picture. To me, that's what the church is all about. Anyone old enough to remember the South Bank show? Remember that? And the little spark? And I used to think that was the ministry of the church, was the little divine spark between Adam, humanity on the left-hand side, and God on the other. And I still believe that. I really do believe that God is a God of miracles and reaches out and touches. But actually, if you look at the bigger picture, who's been to Sistine Chapel? Yeah, quite a few of you have seen it. It's amazing, isn't it? But if you notice, God's reaching out hugely. God's there. He's wanting to be with Adam, and Adam's kind of whatever. Now, to be fair to Adam, I think that's before the breath of life has been put in him, so you can't really blame him. But there's this idea, to me, I think my job more and more isn't just to see the spark, but it's actually to help Adam reach out, just to lift up that arm. How near God is to each one of us. How near God is, the God who reaches out to us all the time. And if we can just help people where we find them to move on. This guy was a corporal. The colour sergeant in charge of their group had been killed a few weeks before. Then the sergeant who was above him went on leave, so he was a corporal, and for 2 weeks he was in charge of all the operations in the most southerly place in Afghan. Just a young guy, but he's there. He's in the middle of a firefight, and he's the one controlling it. He's bringing in the air stuff. So much we expect of people, young men and women who are just getting there. Sometimes when you think of the army and religion, you think of the big things. That's the chapel at Sandhurst. I've had the privilege to serve a minister there twice. You get all the big stuff like that. You get great to do it in front of royalty and prime ministers and all that sort of stuff. But actually, that was my church tent in Afghan. I like that picture. It reminds me of the Pillar of Cloud. It's actually the Bastion burn pit where they got rid of all the rubbish every day. But that was my congregation, just normal soldiers who took the time out to be there. But half the time, actually, church was, because we know church isn't a noun, it's not a place you go to, church is a verb. We church it. And actually, I used to take church out wherever I went. I had all the stuff in my webbing kit, and wherever I went, I just offered to pray with people, do services and stuff like that, and they lapped it up. Probably because it was a dangerous place. I don't think many of them would be coming to church on a Sunday normally, but they wanted it, and they wanted something of the hope of God for them. Normal stuff. That's one of our guys getting baptised. First met him in a jungle clearing in Belize, and just talking with him, and over several months, and in Afghan, eventually he said he wanted to commit himself to Christ. So we baptised him. Absolutely fantastic. Bible studies. That's the most southerly base in Afghan we were in. I was tired on that. I was going for a few days, so I was carrying all my heavy burden and stuff and extra stuff with me, and everyone else was on light patrol because they needed to just come out and go back in. So I was really tired. I'd been out for about 9 hours. Felt like 9 days. And when we got in, all I wanted to do was literally to get this burden off, to sit down, to have some food and just recharge. But the sergeant in charge, he said, "No, Padre, you can't sit down yet. Come and see this." Now, this was a guy whose religion was the horses. We used to get welfare minutes that we phoned up on a sat phone so we could talk to our family. He used it for putting on bets. That was his kind of his thing at life. Brilliant bloke. But he wanted me to see this. That because of one of the guys had died, he'd actually made a wreath out of cam netting. And he found some poles and done a cross. And I'd given each of the groups who were in these bases some little kind of books with stuff in before the service, with service stuff, so they could use them. And he wanted to show me what he'd done. He wasn't particularly religious, but he was spiritual. And I think that's true of everyone. If you haven't come across this is the Engel scale. Basically, it's got different things, but it's on the idea that, perhaps on some views of it, Stalin might be -10, St. Paul is +10, and 0 is where you bump into God, sort of thing. But the idea of it is that we're all on this path towards getting to know God better. And it might be in church that most people are in the pluses, some people are just in the getting to know God, a few people are still in the kind of, they're interested, but just checking it out, finding out whether they can believe it's true. But that fringe, that friend, and that family. And more, I believe that the job of the church and my job is wherever we find people is to help nudge them onto the next step. That just a little bit nearer. Not force it in any way, but I found that people want to talk about it. I found that the hardest people I've ever met in the special forces things, they want to talk about it. They want to talk about God. They want to check this out. It takes time. I'm just going to see my timings. You've heard the old adage that people don't want to know how much you know until they know how much you care. Pastoral care is about time and looking after people and spending it with them. That was in Iraq. It was in the back of a Warrior armoured fighting vehicle. It was a 9-hour patrol. I didn't know this lot very well, so I thought I'd go out for a long one with them to start with. You can see how hot it was there. Someone took a temperature gauge in with the back door shut. It was 63 degrees centigrade in the back of there. A slow cooker starts working at 70. That gives you an idea how hot it was. For the first hour, they didn't really say that much. After that, for about an hour, they started talking quietly amongst themselves, but there was a padre in the corner. After that, about third hour in, they started asking me a few questions, and I obviously passed muster, so they asked me a few more. By about the 9th hour, I knew everything about them, probably more than I wanted to, definitely more than their mums knew about them. I'll tell you, but just being with them in the danger, in the heat, in the spending time doing what they do, incarnation. There's a cost to it, though. What's that for you? In your setting, what does incarnation look like? Laying down your life, not necessarily ultimately, but in the small day-by-day sort of thing. I mentioned jungle warfare training. They've done it twice in Belize, the best thing I've ever done in the army. Absolutely brilliant. I love the jungle. It's fantastic. I had a hummingbird sitting there and seeing snakes go through, and it was glorious. But the weirdest thing is I don't particularly like the dark. I'm the sort of person who likes a little bit of light in a room. Do you know what I mean? But at night, under the jungle canopy, I literally could not see my hand in front of my face. It was absolutely pitch black. When you're waiting for your eyes to wake up, and it didn't happen. It was so absolutely dark. But we all know that all you got to do is turn a light on, and the dark disappears. Now, some religions believe that light and dark are equal and opposite, but we don't believe that. We just believe that darkness is the absence of light. And Jesus says, "You are the light of the world." He says it to me. He says it to you. That means when you go in those dark places, when you live with people in their dark places, you bring that light in. You bring the light of Jesus in, and darkness has to go back. As they say, it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. Now, I've got to be honest, sometimes we're just a lucky charm as padres. They kind of think they're not going to get killed if they got the padre with them. I've got one mate who was being mortared, and they dug shell scrapes, and there were some guys in the shell scrape. They said, "Padre, get over here!" So he was running towards it, and then the next people in the next shell, "No, Padre, come over here!" So he changed, and the first lot said, "No, get over here, Padre!" And there was mortars landing, and he eventually just dived in the nearest ditch he could find. But the reason with that was they thought that you're going to be okay if you've got the padre with you. You've got to look after him. Which is a nice idea, and we don't dispel it, but the reality is you look at the number of padres who are on our roll of honour and you realise it's not always true. A bit like Corporal Tom Gaydon, a good, godly man, and yet he suffered the same fate as many of our soldiers. No easy answers. Sometimes we're just a break in routine. There was 100 people in that camp. I did Christmas, that was Christmas Eve at about 8 o'clock. Then I did midnight mass. Then I did service next morning. And I think overall we had about 180 people, which means that people were coming back and back. They wanted something. In the middle of that darkness, they wanted perhaps something of home, a break in routine, but actually that light was shining in that darkness. Sometimes it's a reminder of home. Sometimes it's because we understand the bigger things in life. SME, we say in the army, subject matter expert of death, sadly, but also of hope, I hope. Actually, that there is hope there. And the one who told us about this told us to take up our cross. And he's the one who actually went and hung on a cross for us. And there is a cost to it all. I'm so glad when I became a Christian quite a few years ago now, that the evangelist who was sharing stuff, and he was brilliant. I really wanted to, I thought, yeah, I'm going to become a Christian. Then he said at the end, he said, don't do it if you're not 100% sure, he said, because it's a hard life. It's not easy following Jesus. It'll take you to some difficult places. You've got to make sure that you want to follow Jesus and stick with him. So I spent the next 3 months, I went and bought a Bible. I started reading it with some notes. I believe Jesus was who he said he was, but I spent 3 months working out whether I wanted to follow Jesus, whether actually I wanted to give my life to Jesus, to commit to him in the difficult times. Eventually did. So glad I did. But it's taken me to some places where I never thought a couple of war zones would be part of it. And they were dangerous. That's one of our guys. He actually that's a bullet coming out of his helmet. He got shot. The bullet went into the helmet. It went round the inside of the helmet, hit the chin strap buckle, and luckily bounced out and got stuck there. So that's an AK-47 Kalashnikov 7.62 round actually sticking out. He came to church next morning. He just wanted to pay his respects to the big guy, you know. But I mean, and actually, there's some good kit. I mean, that's a Mastiff. You see how big a hole that's in? That was hit by a very big roadside bomb, improvised explosive device. Everyone survived that. One guy lost a foot. He lost a foot because the percussive force of that explosion went through his foot and minced the bones, and the doctors couldn't put it back together. So in the end, they had to actually take his foot off. Greater love has no one than this, and they lay down their life for his friends. He's not one of the statistics you'd have heard through Afghan, but he's one of the ones that we know about. Many, many, many people who've had life-changing injuries. And you're human. Believe it or not, we've just been attacked in that photo, and that's me in the background. And we are literally in the doo-doos there, because we got ambushed. We knew we were going to be ambushed, because on the patrol, I said to the patrol leader, I said, where are we going? They said, we're going beyond that blue ISO over there. I said, oh, okay, what happens? He said, every time we go beyond that blue ISO, we get attacked. I said, so we're going to do it, are we? Yep. So we went there, and lo and behold, we got attacked. And when they started firing rocket-propelled grenades, we rushed into this compound, and where a few of us hid were in this, where they kept the manure for their field. So that's actually goat manure. So that nice effect, that looks really nice there, is actually all the yuck in the air that's up in the air. But we're laughing. We're laughing so much, because there's a human reaction to it. You've got adrenaline just kicking out through your body. Absolutely amazing. But then you come down and you consider it a bit more. I'm going to ask you a question that a Tier 1 Special Forces operator asked me. I travelled into a patrol base overnight and got there, went to bed. They were out on a stirring up the hornet's nest, so to speak, going into an area to see what the enemy would do, and the enemy attacked them, and they killed quite a lot of the enemy. And they came in next morning. I was up, we had breakfast together, nice good English breakfast, fantastic in the middle of Afghan. And one of these Special Forces guys said at the table, I just put a bit of sausage in my mouth, luckily, and he said, Padre, can I ask you a question? Sure, yeah. He said, is it okay to enjoy fighting and killing? I'm going to give you 5 times longer than I had. Think about it for 20 seconds. Think about what you'd say. The whole table went quiet. Everyone at that table wanted to hear. Because that's what we put them out there. That's our government that put them out there to do that. And he was getting a sense of satisfaction from it. Our voters had voted in the government that sent us out there. Think about what your answer would have been. But Jesus never shied away from those questions. And then there's death. Woodbine Willie, I mentioned earlier, he was famous for going out into no man's land in the First World War. One famous story tells of him crawling out to working party in no man's land that was putting up barbed wire in front of their trenches to stop the enemy coming across. A nervous soldier challenged him. He said, "Halt, who goes there?" Woodbine Willie replied, "The church." When the soldier asked what on earth the church was doing out there, he replied, "Its job." Where are those areas for you in your world? Greater love has no one than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. They say two animals make up the full English breakfast, the chicken and the pig. They say that the chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. But we as a church are committed to that life. The army calls it selfless commitment. Jesus calls it laying down your life for your friends. I'm coming to near the end now. I want a story by Ian Barclay about he was on a train in England and there was two American guys on the thing opposite, and then suddenly one of them had a epileptic seizure and he fell down and Ian Barclay went forward to help, but his friend was all over it and helped him out. And being British, he felt the need to make small talk, as we do, and he asked where they were going and what they were doing. And the man's friend started to tell their story. As young men, they'd both been drafted to Vietnam. They'd seen a lot of action. It ended with a patrol deep in enemy territory when he had stepped on a landmine and he wrapped his knuckles against his prosthetic legs. Then the enemy opened fire in the ambush. He was laying on the floor with his legs missing and his mate was hit in the shoulder, yet he grabbed him and pulled him out of the firefight. He managed to pull him a couple of 100 yards through the firefight into the jungle, and they went quiet until it had passed. They were deep behind enemy lines, and his mate, after putting tourniquets on both limbs, started to drag him metre by metre in agony because of his wounded shoulder. He told him to leave me there, save himself, but he wouldn't. He said, I drifted in and out of consciousness while he dragged me for 3 days through that jungle until he reached a road and flagged down a passing patrol. I was medevaced out, he said, and after the war I started a company and became quite successful. But he came to live in England. But we kept in touch, writing to each other at Christmas, as you do. 2 years ago, he wrote that he developed epilepsy and he started having these fits. So I sold up and I came over here to travel with him so I could be here whenever he has these fits. Ian Barclay said, that's amazing, to give up so much to come and help your friend like that. And the man looked at Ian Barclay in the eye and said, not after what he did for me. After what he did for me, there isn't anything I wouldn't do for him. After what he did for me, there isn't anything I wouldn't do for him. It's been said that those who have nothing they're willing to die for probably have nothing worth living for. I don't know if that's true. It's worth considering. What do you think you'd be willing to pay the ultimate price for? The reason Woodbine Willie could do what he did and step out of the crowd was that he knew that 2,000 years before, 2,000 miles away, Jesus was totally committed to him and that he stepped out of the crowd for him also. Christians believe that the God who was everywhere became the God who was somewhere, that the faceless God got a face and the nameless God got a name, and that name was Jesus. Terrible theology, don't tell this to my theology teachers, but God in a body, if you like. God's heart lived out in human flesh with all its struggles, problems and hassles in the middle of the darkness, fully man yet fully God. And he got his hands dirty, living as one of us, but showing a better way and a better way to God. And such was his selfless commitment to each one of us that he walked that way of love and service, eventually dying on the cross. A death so brutal that even Romans weren't allowed to be executed on it. And as he hung there for 6 hours, arms pinned to that rough wooden beams by the nails, I believe he was reaching out to God on one side and us on the other. Heaven on one side and earth on the other. The seen on one side and the unseen on the other. And building a bridge to bring us to God. What we see in Michelangelo with God reaching out, actually that was closed at that first Easter. That new beginning, a new start, peace. Greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. As I end, soldiers play a huge part in the Gospels, especially in Jesus' last week. It was soldiers who crucified him. It was soldiers who brutalized him. They'd been brutalized themselves through the campaigns that they'd done. They mocked him, they beat Jesus, they whipped him, they scourged him, they prophesied, tell us who hit you. Soldiers still go through really difficult things that changes them, and we have to be there to help. Then in Jesus' story, there was a senior officer, Pontius Pilate, who knew what the right thing to do, but he didn't have the moral courage to do it. And he literally washed his hands. What I love, though, I absolutely love, is that the centurion, it's a cross between a sergeant major and a company commander, who'd been there, seen it, done it, bought the t-shirt, he was the first person for whom the penny dropped. When he saw how Jesus died, when he saw Jesus on that cross looking down at him saying, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing, he was the one who said, surely this man was the Son of God. And the first person in salvation history who got it was a soldier. Amen.
Hey guys, before you go, we just want to say a massive thank you for watching this video today. My name's Chris. I'm part of the leadership team here at the Beacon Church. You know, as a church, we have a big vision. We believe that we exist to help people to know God, to find freedom, to discover their purpose, and to make a difference. If this video has made a difference in your life today, then make sure you check out our other content in our playlist. We believe it's going to really help you out. And don't forget to like and subscribe as you go. Well, that's all from me today. Take care. God bless.